Good afternoon, and welcome to the webinar, Quality Impacts Business, Driving Bottom Line Success Through Quality. This event, brought to you by Quality, is sponsored by ETQ. I'm your moderator, Daryl Sealand, Editorial Director of Quality. Thanks for joining us. Today's presenters are Jennifer Bianchini, Senior Product Marketing Manager at ETQ, and Rissa Sparks, Chief Financial Officer at ETQ. Don't forget to submit your questions, and later in the program, our presenters will address as many as possible. Today's event is being recorded and archived on qualitymag.com. And now I'm excited to turn it over to today's first presenter, Jennifer Bianchini.
All right, thank you, Daryl, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We are happy you are here. So let's jump in. Let's start by taking a look at how quality has an effect across the entire organization. Because as you can see here, investing in a quality management system benefits everyone. You will want to build a business case using the terms for justifying the funding that the CEO and CFO plus other stakeholders expect to hear in a business case, especially when other parts of your organization are also requesting funding. So, looking at the CEO, one of the influences of quality for them is helping to drive consistent business results. For the CIO, another example is harmonizing systems and processes. And then compliance, where quality has an effect across the entire product lifecycle. And around to the COO for improving operational efficiency and much more. Quality influences everyone. And when you invest in a quality management system that delivers value across your organization, you have a system that supports the continuous improvement of quality for customer satisfaction, product safety, and requirements such as internal, customer, market, or regulatory. So, how do you get there? Start by showing the business value a quality management system will add to your organization. It's more than saving money. It's about investing to help the top line and revenues as well as cost. And quality helps to drive revenue by increasing productivity. It helps eliminate the labor-intensive work that might take place on a daily basis. And if you have happier employees creating better products, you will have happier customers because of better quality products in the market, which brings better products to market faster. So, how can we ensure an investment in a QMS, especially today with the economic headwinds and the things that can sometimes get in the way of investing? We start by helping everyone to understand how to put the best case forward for investing in quality at this point in time, especially when the organization is balancing competing needs and needs to invest wisely. We want to help you put the best case forward for a wise investment. And the reason we are passionate about bridging the gap between quality and the business and understanding the ROI is, as quality professionals, we talk about what you see in the yellow sticky notes: continuous improvement, quality events, Six Sigma, and nonconformance. They are all very focused on quality. What we don't do is talk in business terms: profit, margin, expenses, or revenue. But there are several areas where quality crosses over into the business, like warranties, recalls, scrap, and waste. They have an impact on the organization. So we go from talking about all of the terms in quality to the items that talk about business, because the warranty, recalls, scrap, and waste drive results when it comes to increasing revenue, reducing expenses, and increasing margins. This is because even more important for public companies where the annual report has this information, this is all very visible and very valuable. So as quality people, we have a real impact within our organizations, our position in the market, and not just for our products, but for the financial markets as well. So what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Rissa, and she will share with you how to effectively communicate a QMS business case to your CFO.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today, and thank you, Jennifer. I'm here to talk about a little bit more about the framing that you can use as you're working to gain financial support for investments, which includes quality management, and really ways that you can make those conversations a bit easier, especially with your finance leaders in your company. I think we can all agree that the current economy is fairly challenging and that there's a lot of uncertainty. Most companies are really closely monitoring spend, and there's a lot of pressure across all departments in an organization to make reductions, which only increases the scrutiny on spend or any spend requests. And in these types of situations, I find that companies either tend to be reactive to the economic environment or proactive. And when I speak about reactive, or when I say reactive, I'm really referring to that tendency, and I think we've all seen this, to immediately go to cost cutting or to delay non-critical projects, or in some cases, even raising prices, although that tends to be a little less common. But these can all have really negative impacts on an organization. It, first of all, impacts employee morale negatively. It can have a poor brand impact. And generally, it can also slow down growth when the economy improves. The other option for companies is to be more proactive and thoughtfully invest longer term in automation and productivity enhancing technology. And there's a lot of payoffs with going in this direction. There's operational superiority, there's improved customer satisfaction, and then the company is also prepared for growth and will see longer term cost savings by making investments in these periods. But it's really hard not to think short term in economic situations like we are in now and to make proactive investments. And this is why it's so important to very clearly frame your business case as you are going to your finance leaders for support for a new investment. So turning to the next slide, this shows how CFOs evaluate investments. And really, what I want to speak to here is how to best frame the conversation so you'll have the best outcome. I think the first thing to do is always to come prepared to those conversations and armed with data. This will help you reach the outcome that you want. It also helps to set a conversation or have a conversation that has common terms and is a factual based conversation as well. You don't have to, and I tell everyone this, you don't have to do a significant analysis. I'm not, as when someone comes to me, expecting them to come having done weeks of analysis and work, but just providing those key pieces of information that help frame the problem, frame the solution, and then clearly goes through the cost impact. It will only help you get that approval for a quality tool or any other investment that you want to have made. A couple of things that I would recommend focusing on is, first of all, the nature of the request. Why are you making this request? And that can be a couple of different things. Is it required? Is there a legal obligation? Is this something to support growth expansion? Will it enable productivity? But just being very clear on that is a great place to start. And then the strategic fit. It's very important for me to understand that why, as a finance leader, would I allocate resources to your investment versus the 5 other people who are coming to me for spending money? I need to understand, with a very limited budget, where it's best for me to allocate funds so that we can meet as a business our strategic goals. And I really appreciate when someone comes to me and helps me make that judgment. And one thing to keep in mind with this is you may have an investment that has a phenomenal return, but it doesn't reach the strategic goals of the company. And I still likely won't give approval for that because it all goes back to that strategic piece. And then the next piece is really clearly defining the financial business case. Is it going to be a profitable investment, and when? And when you're putting together this analysis, ask the finance team for help. I love getting involved in investment decisions, running analysis. This is why I went into finance, and I know that my team does as well. And, there's a number of tools that you can bring into this. There's, things like net present value, payback period, or ROI, but generally it's coming in with a sense of, will this reach profitability for the company? And as you're doing this analysis, be very clear on the assumptions that you're making. There's always assumptions in any analysis, but you want to understand those assumptions. And I want to really clearly understand those assumptions so I can see where there's maybe some risk in the analysis. And then finally, the last thing that I always ask when someone comes to me with a request is, what would happen if I don't make this investment? And so it's being very thoughtful about what that means for the organization. And it could also be, around the timing of the investment. If I don't make it now, could I make it in a year? And what would be the impact on the organization? If you turn to the next slide, if we just look at one of the measures for profitability that I discussed, which is ROI, which is the return on investment. It's one of a handful of tools that can be used to create a business case. And it's the calculation of the value of an investment versus the cost, or said another way, or the profitability of an investment. Basically, it's telling me if I'm going to make more money than we are spending. And, ROI is not the only point in making this decision, but it is a key point and data point in the decision, and it helps expedite the conversation, especially if you come in with that number, because it helps me understand what would happen or what is the financial benefit for the organization of bringing in a QMS system. Generally, the higher the ROI, the better. But, as I said, that just having a high ROI is not the only piece of information that I need in making that decision. And then finally, just reiterating, because I think sometimes when an analysis is being done, there can be a focus on being absolutely correct. This is directional. Of course, you want to have information that you can defend and is reasonable, but there are a lot of assumptions in these calculations. And so this is, used as a starting point in the discussion, and it does not have to be completely accurate. So I'm going to turn it back to Jennifer to talk a little bit more about the business case, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Rissa. That was really insightful. So as we move forward, another thing to keep in mind and to help keep the conversation going with those within your organization who will approve the funding for expanding a QMS, such as your CFO, is you need to position the conversation with language that is in their area of focus. We have some examples listed here, and I'll go through one or two. So let's say your primary focus may involve reducing the cost of poor quality, such as scrap, rework, or complaints. But when you're having those conversations, discussing this with the folks who will approve the funding, consider language that supports improving the quality and profitability of your products, which is more relatable to them. Another example is when looking at reducing the risk of noncompliance. While you may be focused on decreasing the number of audit findings, consider language around ensuring the entire organization is maintaining compliance for all regulatory or customer requirements, including any internal requirements you may have as well. So earlier, Rissa talked about ROI and its value to a CFO. Another tool you can add to your quality management business case tool belt is an ROI calculator. We developed an ROI model that was built with input from a dozen customers who use ETQ Reliance every day. We looked at where they saw the value, and based on their feedback, they identified 4 key areas where a quality management system adds value, with 14 supporting metrics. The key areas were around productivity improvements, cost saving, and revenue growth. So the first is reducing the risk of noncompliance. I'll go back to audits for an example. They looked at the amount of time that was saved on audits and reducing the number of audit findings. We were able to measure that customers saw a 20% reduction in the time spent planning and reporting audits with ETQ Reliance. Next is streamlining operations, such as like how able were you quickly able to react to a complaint, or the process you might have when a supplier delivery arrives and if you need to do an inspection. There was a lot of improvement in the number of hours and people, with a 15% reduction in the time spent managing supplier deliveries. So these first 2 items I've mentioned, they are looking at the time and the level of effort that goes into addressing each area. They're what we refer to as a soft cost. Now, the next 2 items focus on hard cost, such as the improvements in scrap, fewer recalls, and reduced inventory carrying costs. Now, this is where you really start to see a significant savings. So, for example, the 10% reduction in field failure costs. This can turn into hundreds and thousands of dollars for many organizations. And finally, growing and protecting revenue. This is through improved customer satisfaction. Having customers buy more of your product, or word of mouth, or maybe social media, that helps to take that message for your product to a wider audience. And also reducing the time of bringing a product to market. This is a new opportunity for revenue. So all of these areas, you see an improvement in the top line and the bottom line. And this is what a CFO like Rissa really likes to hear. These are actual results that our customers achieved. So very briefly, I just like to show you an example of an actual ETQ customer who provided us with the data to populate an ROI calculator to help build their business case. So using that information when looking at an investment in a quality management system, they found, based on the savings, a payback in less than 6 months and an annual benefit of $665,000. Excuse me. This is significant compared to the investment in a quality management system. They also had a 3-year ROI of 330%. And this is why we have Rissa say the numbers. So in the 4 key areas of value, we talked about where you see in the pie chart. So we talked earlier about the 4 key areas of value for a QMS, and you can see that in the pie chart. They had benefits across the board from investing in a quality management system. So again, the kind of information that a CFO not only likes to hear about, they understand as well. So what can you do to start the process? Begin by collecting the data you need to build a quality management business case. Utilize the departments within your organization who have the information to help you. Develop relationships with them. Work with the stakeholders on the finance and IT teams or the auditors. Learn the business terms and processes for tracking the financial health of your organization. What metrics are they reporting up to senior leadership? When you understand this, you can script these metrics into your business case and help influence the bottom line. And we are here to help you also. An ETQ representative can provide you with the guidance you may need to build a quality management business case and the language your business leaders will understand. They will help put the picture together, highlighted in dollars and cents, the payback your organization will receive with ETQ Reliance. So we've now reached the point in our presentation where we would like to open it up to a Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you, Rissa. Yes, as promised, we are going to take some time and go through and answer some questions that have come in throughout the program. I want to remind everyone that we'd love your feedback in our webinar survey to help improve our programs. If you do have a question for Jennifer and for Rissa, I would encourage you to get that into the Q&A chat box. So our first question, really kind of a comment and a follow-up question. But again, it comes from Kevin. He states, I have been most successful getting resources by having many informational discussions with decision makers and how it will affect them and help our team reach our goals. Do you see more need for quality professionals to start getting more of the lean toolkit to help justify projects and resources?
I mean, I'll jump in here first, Rissa. I think that's great. You really helped to highlight one of the key takeaways I hope that people take away from this presentation is by you having those informal discussions with the stakeholders within your organization, you've gained that information and that knowledge. So when you come to the point of building the business case, so thank you for sharing that. That's really great to hear. And then I lost the question. What was the question again, Daryl, or was it just the comment?
Do you? It was the comment about having many informal discussions with the decision makers. But the question ultimately was, do you see more need for quality professionals to start getting more of the lean toolkit to help justify projects and resources?
I'm not sure about what is meant by lean toolkit, but absolutely, like I've stated, getting that information and those resources for helping to build out a business case.
Okay. Next question.
And I just wanted to.
Sure.
Sorry. I just wanted to jump in. On the first comment, I really appreciate that because, I personally do that if I ever have a project or an investment that I'm trying to get through, from an executive team level. I have many informal discussions before those decisions are presented to them, and it helps tremendously.
Indeed. Okay, so our next question is for you, Rissa. Comes from Pranav. Basically, what is your experience approving projects based on a cost avoidance versus ROI?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I try to. So there are times where you are told that you have to reduce across the board, but I try to take a measured approach because just because something is cheaper does not necessarily mean it's better. And so that's where I really try to understand what is the outcome for the company, what is the trade-offs that may be made if I'm going for an option that maybe is avoiding costs versus something that is an investment now that's going to bring an ROI later. And that's where it's incredibly helpful for me if I can have a conversation with the person making the proposal where they have a lot of that data and can speak to the trade-offs, can speak to the benefits, because then I'm armed with the information to then take it through for approval. So there are times where we all have to make that decision for cost avoidance, but I tried to step back and look at what the long-term strategic benefits are for the organization, because as I said, sometimes cheaper does not have necessarily the outcome that you want in the longer term.
Okay. Next question is sort of related to that, but how would you react if you saw a high ROI in the 100 or 1,000? Or do you look for that least expensive solution?
Yeah, and I think very similar to what I just said, I don't default to the least expensive solution. In my experience, sometimes you end up with hidden costs in those solutions, or, whether it's add-ons as you're going through the implementation process or longer term, because you only get a very small part of the functionality that you ultimately need. And this is where it's a discussion on, for the ROI piece, what are the assumptions that are going into the ROI? Do you feel confident? Are they reasonable? And if the individual is coming to me who is the quality expert in a quality management system request, then I will defer to them on a lot of the technical pieces because they understand the business, et cetera. And if they feel confident and their assumptions are reasonable, then I feel comfortable with that ROI.
Excellent. Next question is for you as well, Rissa. How do you, as a CFO, help quality professionals make the case to buy a QMS? Some QMS folks may not have a lot of experience buying software.
Yeah, and I think this goes to Kevin's question as well. It's where having an executive sponsor and having that influence, or having made that influence within the company, certainly helps. I think it's, from a finance lens, I default a little bit to numbers, but it's, what are those assumptions? How will it benefit the company? How is it going to, in some cases, prevent external risks that I at all costs want to avoid? So I think it's also understanding as a stakeholder, what are the key things that I need, beyond just this, meeting the strategy of the organization, but there's key things risks that I want to mitigate, and a quality management system can help me do that. And so it's very helpful, to have that information. And if it aligns with my goals for the organization, then I'm more likely to support moving through with that investment. But it may take multiple conversations. Sometimes that does happen.
Indeed. Next question is from Dwayne. He'd like to know, how do you quantify the benefits of compliance?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's going to be a balance between hard costs, which are, very tangible. I may not have to hire a compliance person or outsource, have a compliance consultant in 6 months, versus I may avoid this risk or this machine downtime, which, is less certain. And that's where documenting those assumptions is very important. And, putting those pieces together. But there's certainly, compliance benefits us all. It reduces the risk. There's a reason we have compliance, and it reduces the risk for the company. And so the trick is, how do you figure out those hard and soft costs to be able to quantify it, and then just be very clear about those assumptions again.
Okay. I'd kind of like to open this up for both of you and just basically ask if there is one key sort of that you would like the audience to take away from your presentation, what would it be?
I'll jump in. I would say for quality professionals, you really are in a unique position to have an impact within your organization to help drive revenue and increase productivity. And you really are in a position where you can leverage it and help turn quality from a cost center to a profit center.
And I agree with Jennifer. I think it's framing the conversation when you're speaking with finance around how are you as a department and team really helping, the company reach its goals, and how are you managing the risk for the organization? And so reframing that conversation.
Great. That is just about all the time that we have for questions today. So please join me in thanking Jennifer Bianchini and Rissa Sparks for their presentation, as well as our sponsor, ETQ. If you have any additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to click the email us button on the console. Please visit qualitymag.com/webinars for the archive of this presentation, as well as information about our upcoming events. We appreciate your time, and we hope you found this webinar to be a valuable experience. Have a great day.